Program here. Just managed to wolf some lunch down. I imagine you all did too. I was really impressed with the color of the vegetables. A lot of variety out there. So I think I might have been able to design to match some of our backdrop. So what we'd like to talk about next is the Internet of Things. And you might have noticed some changes from what you expect. We really was looking forward to having Amazon up here to do part of a discussion around Alexa and the Amazon Echo. But their legal department actually put the kibosh on the last minute and said that they weren't able to go talk about the things we were intended to talk about. So very happy and thankful to actually I want to thank T-Mobile and Daniel Herb specifically. Last minute substitution. So our challenge right now is to have an interesting discussion on IoT. Pretty sure we're going to have it. But to make it look like we've prepped this weeks in advance, when really we had about 2 minutes right up until now. So tell me if you can spot any chinks in our armor, but I think we're going to have a pretty entertaining discussion regardless. So with that, I'd like to invite up Danny Bowman and Daniel Herb. Gentlemen. Thanks a lot for joining us. Please have a seat.
Thank you, Derek.
Thank you. Save one for me, though.
Okay.
All right, thanks.
We can do that.
All right, so I think a great way to start, as usual, is to do the introductions. Danny, I see you're first on the list of the slide here, so why don't we start with you?
Sure.
Tell us a little about yourself, your background in M10, and then we'll move over to Daniel.
Absolutely. Well, good afternoon. Danny Bowman. I've had the opportunity to be here really focused in the U.S. for a little over 26 years in the wireless business. And I actually, at one point in my career, I spent a tremendous amount of time in the M2M IoT space back in 2008. And then I've evolved. I've worked at Samsung Mobile for 3 years, and I'm now at a company called LeEco. And for those of you who don't know LeEco in China, we're a conglomerate of lots of things. I'll kind of give you a U.S. analogy. If you were to take Amazon, Apple, Uber, Paramount Pictures, Tesla, and Uber, and put them all together, that's fundamentally what we actually do in China.
And LeEco has really been basically spending a lot of money at the trade shows lately for an awareness level. And I liken it a bit to a Tencent. It's a little bit been known for a little longer time, but really active in all aspects of a connected consumer, telephones, as you said, TVs, devices. I mean, it seems like this is a brand like the old Zenith or the old General Electric that really covered all of the electronics, but also has the modern aspects of a sharing economy and things as well, right?
No, that's a good analogy. In my mind, we're pretty simple. We really look at the end user and what are all the experiences that between the collision of the internet and mobile and broadband that has brought that to life in a very compelling way.
Yep.
And I think many of you who've been around, and I know many of you, and you have, what the cloud has really brought back to life, and I'm using the mainframe as an analogy because it's now back called the cloud,
Yep.
and high bandwidth, which whether you're tethered or you're mobile, if you create great software and great connectivity and user experiences, you can now push that to basically any device and give an end user really a common and seamless experience. And that's fundamentally why we're in so many of these businesses, is to create value for the end user.
Right. And are you able to give me an idea of scale for LeEco? Is it in terms of revenue or numbers of users and things like that?
Sure. Many of you who pay attention to Asian companies and Chinese companies, it's different. They're typically, in the U.S., you would have a big holding company with a lot of subsidiaries. Use Alphabet as an example.
Yep.
Probably a good one to use. In Asia, a lot of the structure is more about brother-sister companies.
Right.
And so we have one publicly traded entity, which is I'll use and liken, as people like to think about, is the original SVOD, AVOD, over-the-top business. Some people like to say Netflix.
Yep.
Here in the U.S. And so that was the original business model, and that is a publicly traded company in China. All the other businesses are privately held.
I'll by that one. Okay, great. Thanks. So let's continue the introductions and pass it over to Daniel from T-Mobile.
Thank you. So my name's Daniel Herb, and I'm from T-Mobile US. I've been there about 5 years, so joined and fortunate enough to be able to participate in one of the more exciting turnarounds in the wireless industry. I think in general I've spent probably more years now than I want to remember, 15, approaching 20 years in either wireless or web services. And so really exciting to be able to also be at the forefront of IoT and a lot of the things that are now happening as part of a company that's got capability of investing and getting in front of that. So this has been a fun show to see the change just from a year or 2 years ago in that momentum.
Great. So from an IoT perspective with T-Mobile USA, you know, we hear about the smart fridge, we hear about connected cars, and we can run through a list of devices. Where does the network operator, T-Mobile, fit into a solution set with connected devices?
That's a great question. It's, I think, paramount for us is start with the customer problem, work your way back. So the pieces that a network operator really has to get right are making the right bets because you've got technology that's not going to move over 2 to 5 year period. So from endpoint up to cloud, you've got to have the infrastructure in place. Yeah. A theme that I've heard a little bit here that is typically doesn't get any attention is you also have to make sure that you're removing barriers. And that typically means a lot of hard work in transformation in IT investment that is completely not sexy, happens inside your own corporate boundary and nobody knows about or should care about. But in order to be able to participate and partner and stay flexible, yeah, you have to do the work.
Right. So is this consistent with some things we heard this morning? Removing barriers being British Telecom said become a digital supermarket. Kareem and Dr. Shakin talked about making a digital platform to enable service to build on top. So is that kind of, you guys see yourself as a digital enabler. How do you do that in the IoT space? Is it by offering SIM cards? Is it by being creative about the business terms on those SIM cards? What are the aspects, or is it, can you work over Wi-Fi and other networks as well?
Well, it's a combination, I think. If I kind of peel back, what you're asking is, how are we looking at connectivity as the leading thing that we provide in IoT?
Yep.
It's a bread and butter of our business. And again, starting from the pain points, complex to buy, complex to understand the pricing, expensive,
yep,
and hard to manage across the different network topologies. And so yes, we have a lot of effort. We're very far forward in embedded base of Wi-Fi and the capabilities we have of switching across Wi-Fi and cellular in existing endpoints, as well as work that we're doing everywhere from shared LTE, UAA down to legacy technologies.
Yeah.
But again, I think the piece for us is to make sure that we can be simple and clear so that when customers are trying to solve problems, we're focused on managing that complexity and not getting in the way of them doing the more exciting things that they want to do.
When you say customers, are you, as T-Mobile, are you referring to a Samsung or an LG making a fridge, or LeEco making a TV, or are you referring to the end consumer in this case?
Well, I think that one of the differences, just personal opinion, one of the differences in IoT is that everybody has to take on the mantle of being a product owner for the customer experience to the end user.
Yep.
It's a space that has very few true B2C plays. Everybody is either combining with or selling through others. Yeah. But you really have to be a champion on behalf of what the customer experience is. Most of our customers in this space, as you point out, are wholesalers, resellers, or manufacturers who themselves are moving into being some type of reseller.
So I'm going to sum that up as you work B2B, but you got to think through to the C if you want to support enable. That's great. I think those are words of wisdom. So what kind of devices does LeEco think are going to be connected? So you guys make so many different types of consumer electronics. Is a TV going to be an important endpoint? I mean, and then are there other devices? How many devices do you envision for LeEco? So first, which ones do you think will be connected? Second one, which ones do you think will be connected through a cellular network versus a LAN?
Okay, no, great question. Most of our focus is really thinking about the consumer. And if you think about what the consumer is going to do in their home,
yep,
one of the critical points of the home is integrating with a beautiful screen, television. Our view of the television is it's actually an internet input first,
yep,
and a monitor second, so to speak, is the way we like to think about it. So that's a first entry point of what is that experience with the internet. In most cases, you're going to need high broadband capability. That could be a Wi-Fi or an Ethernet,
yep,
potentially a 5G connection that could play that out. There's probably cases for fixed, wireless LTE, depending on the situation. But part two of that is what you're doing with that television today, especially if you think about the millennial generation. Nobody just watches TV anymore, right? It is now, it's a multi-screen environment. So we believe one of the most important devices for a user is what we call the smartphone, right? It is that one personal thing that is with you, whether it's your pocket, your purse, in your hand, whatever that happens to be. And the experience between that device and your TV, especially when it's related to content information, why should you have a bifurcated experience? That should be a seamless experience between those two. The other place people, go from there typically, if you're not going to have a ride share, like an Uber or what have you, or a Lyft, or in China, Yadao, you will probably get in a vehicle.
Yep.
So by getting into especially the electric vehicle with what we believe is really what I'll call a smartphone on wheels,
Yep.
is you have a very similar opportunity now. Now, safety and security by driving is job number one, but there's still things that you do between your phone and what you've had on your TV or other screens that should also be a seamless experience. So we look at starting with that consumer first, and then bringing those types of devices and experience with a seamless cloud to bring that to life.
So so LeEco is also active in the automotive space in actually building cars, right?
Yes, we just announced on April 20th our LeEco product in China. We were at the Beijing Auto Show as well, and we actually have a partner in the U.S. called Faraday Future, and if any of you are watching the news, there's a camouflage version of that driving around if you haven't seen in the press.
So you're espousing, what it sounds like what LeEco is doing is espousing very much using IoT for a consolidated user experience, so improving UX. So if I wake up in the morning, kick a podcast off on a radio or a TV in my bedroom, I could keep listening to it, over to the kitchen, on my phone if I was taking a public bus, in my car, kind of resume where I left off. And in fact, maybe I sit in my car and it, seamlessly transfers, or I walk into my house, it flaps up on the TV. With that kind of a consistent user experience.
That is the day in a life of experience.
Preferences,
continuity.
Continuity across. That's
right.
So that's pretty cool. I want to touch one of the subjects that I was going to do when we had Amazon scheduled for this, and I think so critically a turning point for the Internet of Things in the smart home, and it's the use of voice as a UI for the services. And I have to, every time I say voice on this stage today, I mean good voice, because I don't mean voice the way you had it 5 years ago or 10 years ago, where it's accurate 80% of the time or 90. I mean the voice we have today, which is coming in around 98%, maybe 99% of the time, depending on accents and things. But even with accents, I understand Alexa, for example, does pretty good things, the Amazon Echo. So talking about good voice, how do you guys envision good voice as your interface moving along the case for Internet of Things?
Daniel, you want me to go first or you go first?
Well, one of the things I'd like to call out is I think that's a great example of why we're moving to having important new players who are creating the product experiences, and that's something that has been really exciting to watch come on. I mean, even Amazon, it's so fun and exciting to see the iteration and the development of that roadmap, to your point, not just 5 years ago, 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago. Really difficult to have a compelling, highly polished experience. And so I think that, takeaway that we've digested as a team is today you really have to be prepared to move to that pace. You have to expect that the partnership stack, the technology stack, and the expectation from the customer end is going to move at that pace, and therefore there's no other option.
So I'm a user of a variety of smart home. So we're talking smart home. We'll move eventually to end-to-end. We don't have a lot of time. We'll touch on the industrial side. But in the smart home side, I got a bunch of these different things that I'm trying on, the connected garage door. I have the connected fridge, but I haven't bothered to connect it. It has limited functionality, the one I have. But I got a variety of Nest devices, smoke alarms, thermostats. I'm trying them all out. And of course, I have the same problem the industry knows about. They're all siloed. So if I want to do something, I generally will open up my phone, and I have a little folder. So I open up my phone, fingerprint, enablement, turns it on. Now I'm in. Select the folder with my connected home apps. Choose the LiftMaster Chamberlain, which controls my garage door. Wait a few seconds of latency, which I have no idea why it takes so long. Then it's up. Okay, now open the garage door. And this is the kind of user experience that when I demonstrate it to friends and colleagues at my house, they go, that's something I would never do. The reaction is, that was way too long and ridiculous. Watch. And they show me, they walk over to my button and go, And if they can beat me in a race, they go, you're stupid, you're a geek. And I definitely am. But the transition I noticed is when I have Alexa. When I first got Alexa, it was an early release, and it could do a few rudimentary things. I showed my friends that. They go, I got Siri, they weren't that impressed. But now that Alexa has overcome, added functionality, and has integrated with the other things, these two things that I'd show them, they went, I wouldn't do it. Working together, where I go, Alexa, turn on the fan comes on, 98% of the time successful, and it actually works. Now they're going, that's something I'm interested in. So I look at this as a massive friction remover or enabler of breaking down the silos. And I think that's why everybody's chasing after that space. And so I don't know if you have any comments on that before we talk to the industrial applications, but do you see this as maybe as a turning point for the adoption of smart home or consumer technologies because of that?
Yeah, no, I'll start on this one. You know, Derek, I think a lot of opportunities in front of us around the natural voice, but I would also say that we're also at a point in time with AI and machine learning, whether it's my vehicle or my phone that I have with me, I should be at a point where I don't have to talk. That garage door should just sense that I'm close and should open automatically, so I shouldn't have to actually say that. But that being said, which is where we believe we're going to go quickly, the natural voice, and I know by looking at you, it's hard to believe that I actually lived in the era of voice was the killer app.
Yeah.
I did.
Voice portals back in 2001 or so?
Yeah, exactly. And I was really at that time very focused in running a product organization. You had small screens and you could barely see what you were trying to do with an app, and these were the days of Java. And it was like, this is impossible to navigate this. So wouldn't the right communication vehicle be a natural voice?
Yep.
Well, we didn't have the speeds and feeds in the network and all of those, the presence technology.
I think in that era as well, voice, I heard a lot of startups like Quack saying to me, hey, voice is the natural interface. And it wasn't very good for requesting things like, what's the latest sports score? You know, before you could do this, what's the latest sports score? The input was good, but the output was, did you want to hear NHL, NFL? And you gotta, so it was a bad output medium.
Or you called a call center and you were trying to talk.
Yeah.
God only knows where we all know where that is, so that's frustrating. But I believe, and I'll give Amazon a tremendous amount of credit, what they have done, and even Google. The improvement of a natural voice experience has become very effective. Now, the big challenge for all of us is the fragmentation. So in my home, am I going to be talking with Alexa, and then hey Google when I'm somewhere else, and in my car it's
honey, the living room lights aren't working. No, the living room's on Apple.
Right.
No, the bedroom's on the Amazon.
Oh wait, no, Siri's in the closet. Maybe you can come out and talk to me. To me, this is going to be just the big issue that we're all going to have to solve, and how do we get some unity and a seamless experience so that it truly is natural. And that's going to be the real crux of what we need to solve for as an industry.
Jumping quickly into one of your past lives at Samsung, where you're working around the SmartThings platform, the SmartThings device acquisition. Do you see hubs as a potential for bringing things together?
Yeah. So personally, I wasn't involved in the acquisition, but Alex and that business, in my mind, they definitely have the right idea of a platform with an open API environment. Because the key is similar to the carrier model for a second. It's about enablement, right? And the simpleness of doing that. And I think their model actually is a good model for having openness and then being able to connect to all these different areas of the future. But I was not personally involved in that transaction.
So Daniel, let's jump over in the last few minutes to regarding the industrial internet. People seeing a lot of revenue potential in connecting industrial devices up and down different vertical industries. Is that something T-Mobile is aggressively pursuing, and what do you think about it?
Yes to both. And I think a lot of the same challenges that Danny laid out in terms of feeds and speeds is a sort of ubiquitous problem set, but within there, one of the things that I've personally been very excited about is for all the kind of headwind against the buzz of 5G, there's a lot of really foundational work that's moving very quickly to standardize and begin commercializing these technologies. And if you compare back to some of the step changes in the past, 2G, 3G, LTE as examples, it's noticeably different. If the things that we need to do to enable are remarkably the same for consumer and for industrial spaces. And so we're heads down making sure that we've got a network that is built to serve, that has the speed and capacity to do so, both at the high and the low. There's almost more work to be done on the transition from 2G into Cat 1, Cat M in some ways for the industry, because that's a more painful transition that has to be managed as opposed to just leaping into new use cases. But it's something, yes, that we're actively involved both in the planning and collaboration, as well as actually out trying stuff.
Yep. So here's a question that's the elephant in the room, I think, with IoT and the industrial side, maybe even the consumer side, and I'll ask you guys to address it. And it's the fact that, okay, if I'm talking about my phone, it's a pretty important device. I use it a lot. I'll pay $50 a month, $60 a month to connect it with data. We're talking about my tablet. I already have my phone, Turned out a reasonable price. Some people will attach their tablet to the network, was $10 a month. Certainly when it was 50, people were saying, forget it, I'm going Wi-Fi only. So at 10, we connect the tablet. Then you got the watch. You say, okay, well now I got a tablet, I got a phone, so how much do I want to pay for my watch? And there's a problem. The watch also costs $10 a month currently, because the model the carriers have is kind of, well, that's another additional device, additional SIM, additional $10. So if you look at the IoT and the Ericsson idea of 50 billion connected devices that we all seem to kind of agree with, if not more, it can't be 50 billion devices connected at $10 a piece. So are the network enhancements you guys are looking at, as one of the things they're fundamentally doing, lowering the cost of offering a connection? Because unless we lower the cost significantly, well below $1, the industrial IoT is going to reject the scalability of it, right? So what elements are progressing to actually bring the cost down to keep the cellular companies involved? Otherwise it's going to be a Wi-Fi, Zigbee, Z-Wave world and not a cellular world.
Right. That's a question that we spend a lot of time obsessing over. I think at T-Mobile, one of the things that you will hear consistently from our leadership is that we are a mobile internet company. And so we are building ourselves to be that. And if you look at everything from the pricing to the financing to the more dramatic moves that have gained both consumer traction as well as a lot of attention on the consumer side of our business, those are clear indicators of what we're doing to solve for this in the industrial space as well.
Yep. So thank you. And what I'd like to do by way of one second, Danny.
Oh, go ahead.
By way of wrapping up, we have time for one question. So if somebody approaches a microphone, we can take one question, and I'll let you.
All I was going to say is that the foundation of just being in wireless for all 4Gs and now looking at 5. On the carrier side, I spent most of my years there. Really, each generation, when you were really doing the math and what was going to happen, you should get almost a 10x cost improvement to carry that traffic. That's not perfect, but it's a pretty common framework. I have not spent enough time on 5G to understand, is carrying a gigabyte on 5G going to come out to that same at a fully loaded network?
Yeah.
But I would imagine it's probably getting close. But 5G brings so many other things because the latency now is going to be more real time. And so that's been one of the challenges, especially when you start dealing with machines, right, and you're not dealing with people.
Yep.
And what you're trying to do on a real-time basis, and you leverage big data and AI and all the algorithms now to run an entire plant.
Yep.
Right? That is really the future, and being agnostic to RF is really the goal.
Right.
It doesn't really matter what RF should work. It's creating the right experience.
I think, and Daniel mentioned 1 Cat M, but there's a bunch of acronyms for it. But the notion of a narrowband, 5G including a narrowband function with longer life batteries is important. And the cost per megabit will surely be down. And really the question remains is what's going to be the cost per provisioning or the cost per device to kind of maintain and sustain OSS, BSS, those additional devices. And that, if that also is low, then we're going to have cheap bandwidth, maybe narrowband IoT with longer range, longer battery lives, and potentially lower cost. Then we'll sustain a carrier role in IoT going forward. All right. Well, thank you very much, gentlemen. Thanks a lot for joining the panel. And Daniel, in particular, last minute addition, thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Derek. Appreciate it.
Thank you.